What is up, YouTube? My name is Brian. I am the host of the Bearded Nerd podcast, where I teach folks how to play and run games of Dungeons and Dragons. If you are a fan of tabletop role playing games such as Dungeons and Dragons, if you're a fan of goth horror and things that are considered spooky, this video is going to be for you. Today, we're going to talk about the new Dungeons and Dragons book, Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. I'm going to give my pros and cons list so that you have more information to decide whether you want to purchase this book or not, or use the material in this book for your campaign. With that being said, if you enjoy TTRPG content, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to subscribe to this channel. With that being said, let's just dive right into it. So Ravenloft. Ravenloft is the setting from back in the day that started it all. It is where Strahd, the vampire lord of sorts, resides in. And with this book, it seems like it's not going to necessarily focus on only Ravenloft. My guess and speculation is that it is going to focus on creating, as you see here, a complete horror toolkit with everything you need to create a personalized horror campaign to strike fear into the hearts of your players. Meaning, it's going to provide you with everything you need to run a true goth horror campaign for Dungeons and Dragons. Not necessarily sticking to Ravenloft, but to other aspects of the genre and the lore. Cool fun fact, this is the armor of the Death Knight from Dragonlance. And a Death Knight is one of the new features that we will be able to see and play as in Dungeons and Dragons. I believe it is a class or a new class or a new path. They have paths of villainy, which we'll talk about later in this video. But we're going to go down and scroll down and look at these three aspects. So the book is going to focus around domains of dread. As you see here, it says the mists reach from the darkest shadows of the multiverse, condemning the wicked and the brave to endless nightmares as prisoners of domains of dread. So off the bat, what it makes me think is that these places, these planes of existence are for the horror, genre. It is containing different people and different characters, so to speak, within these grim, dark worlds. The Dark Lords, on the other hand, are those who rule these domains. So in here, it says that their depravity drew the attention of the dark powers that led to their imprisonment, but the Dark Lords essentially are the final bosses of these domains. I'm assuming that as a dungeon master, you can have your players kind of travel these planes and battle these Dark Lords. So you'll be able to fight these Dark Lords. And then we have the denizens of the mists. This is where you can populate your campaign with new monsters, which is awesome. You can basically create undead or some sort of fiendish or twisted monster that is based upon the mists, as they say here. And your adventurers can face, it looks like a haunted manor. That might be a monster itself, or a, crazy amount of a fog choked forest. I'm hoping that that's just like an environment that you can interact with as a player and as a dungeon master. But if that's a monster too, that's awesome. But the denizens of Ravenloft ensure that danger is never far away. With that being said, we're going to go into this website here, wargamer.com, where the author Molly basically gave us a rundown of what this might be. It seems like D&D Beyond subscribers are going to be able to access it as early as June 2nd, with pre-orders starting at April 13th. So as of time of recording, it is 4 days after pre-orders started. And it looks like with the multiple reveals, we're going to get two magic items, two origin feats, eight bastion facilities. So if you remember in the latest rules update, according to 2024, which I believe we're now calling D&D 5.5E, you have bastion or headquarter rules. You can, order minions and do all sorts of cool stuff with your base of operations. That's what a bastion is. So we have 8 new facilities and 51 monsters. But there's a lot more within this book. It seems like we are now going to have 8 horror subclasses and 7 that will appear in this book. Remember, one of the big things with this book is that it is in the season of horror, which Wizards is adopting the kind of classic video game term of different seasons of play. So this is going to be one of the seasons where they'll focus on horror and dread and grimdark adventures. Personally, I liked the Curse of Strahd module. I'm not a fan of goth horror and grim dark. It has to be in doses for me. So take that into consideration. But it seems like some of the new classes or revised subclasses are the College of Spirits. So it's it's a bard who communes with spirits for extra powers. The Grave Domain, which has been around for a long time. I remember playing a Grave Domain cleric when I first played Curse of Strahd, and that's coming back. It balances life and death. Essentially, what the Grave Domain cleric does is that the gods within the Grave Domain are about balance. If something is undead, right? If it's supposed to be dead, but it's somehow alive, it is unnatural, and those priests are there to kind of like stomp it out, and vice versa. If something is dead that should be alive, they seek justice for it. So it's a really cool play on judgment and balance. Then there is the Hollow Warden Ranger, the Reanimator Artificer, which, as you can tell by the name, they reanimate things. Hollow Warden, I'm interested to see what that's about. I can just see I can just imagine from the title that maybe they live in like a forest filled with spirits, and they use like the spirit nature for their powers. There's a shadow sorcerer, so using Shadowfell magic or from that plane with lots of darkness debuffs. Okay, that's cool. There's an undead warlock, so maybe maybe their patron is an undead entity or being or god or whatever it may be. That's pretty interesting. The Phantom Rogue, that's pretty cool actually. So maybe they can go in and out of the spirit world and just kind of like, kind of burst in and out of the spirit world as part of their powers. So seems pretty cool so far. You could, if you don't want to play in the world, you could totally just take the classes and adopt those into your own homebrew game. That's the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons. You can copy and paste, lift and shift, whatever you want to use and take it into your own world. Now there's lineages. In previous editions, and as they say here in the previous edition of 5e, lineages were basically subsets of D&D races. You can have like a variant human was essentially, a lineage, or an elf, or, you had different races that had a lineage, that it was a modified or a variant of that specific race. So here we've had Damphir, which is like a half vampire. We have the Hexblood and the Reborn. And this is from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which again, it is part of the Ravenloft Curse of Strahd kind of family. But apparently what we know here is that the Damphir and the Reborn are humanoids. Damphir, again, being half vampire, makes sense. But it says here that With D&D, it's gotten a little it's not as strict on the player creature types because you can kind of mix and match lineages and backgrounds. Back in the 2014 version of D&D 5th edition, you saw a little bit more strictness that you couldn't necessarily homebrew certain, or rather, it would take a long time to homebrew certain classes and kind of meld them together. It was a little bit harder to mix an elf and a dwarf together to create a unique lineage. In the latest edition, 5.5, it's a little bit easier to do that. But with the undead and some of the other aspects, you could see here that they've kind of created a different lineage with the lupin, which I'm going to assume that the lupin is some sort of like werewolf like creature. You have undead, which could be, it could fall into zombie, it could fall into like the path of like a death knight. There's a lot of different things, but the lupin seems to be one of those creatures that, again, is like a were creature. So, like a werewolf, were rat, whatever it may be. Now, backgrounds. This is where I'm not necessarily too excited about the mechanics because there's not a lot of information. So, I'll leave that. Y'all can pause it right now and read it. But I'm really excited about the backgrounds. Backgrounds, are things that you did in a previous life or something that you did before you started adventuring, right? So there's one that is called the Haunted One, very similar to the one in Curse of Strahd. You essentially, and we can take a look at that in a little bit, you have some sort of haunting past that you've been chosen, or it's like a mark that people see, if I'm not mistaken. And you see the proficiencies that it gives you, so on and so forth. But then you have the investigator. That, in my opinion, I'm really excited about because you could kind of play like a monster hunter and use the investigator background to fulfill that role, right? You can be like a Van Helsing almost. That is really cool. I really like that flavor. I really like that as an option. So, from a background perspective, it's pretty solid. I do like that investigator. It's probably my favorite. Dark gifts, though, as we move on, are things that, again, it's so it says here it's going to replace your origin feat with a dark gift. Basically, what a dark gift is probably something that's cursed, right? It's like a double-edged sword. You'll see that it's, again, as it states here, a grim bargain that was offered to an adventurer. Maybe those adventurers in your backstory, you were trying to do something and you didn't have a choice. So you accepted a dark gift for more power, but it comes with a responsibility or a price. Okay, that's what a dark gift is. And there's going to be 8 of them in this Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft that the GM can give out. But it seems like in this book, we're turning them into feats. Okay, so here is what they believe is kind of the recreated list of them, since they were in Van Richten's guide, the Echoing Soul. So proficiency in 2 skills, an extra language, and a random negative effect that you'll roll a d20 on. Gathered Whispers. You can message. Oh, you get the message cantrip. You have a reaction that buffs your armor class, and then a random effect. Living Shadow, Mage Hand cantrip. So you can use Mage Hand. Increased reach for melee attacks. That's awesome. And a random buff or debuff when you are nearby a creature. Makes a d20. Okay. Mistwalker. So you get free use of Misty Step once per long rest. You can travel the abilities, or you have the ability to travel between domains of dread. So you could basically kind of like planes hop, and the ability to create exhaustion inducing terrain for a 10-mile radius. That is powerful. So, like, I just off the cuff, you could, And let me see what the name of the class is. Oh, the Phantom Rogue would be really cool to have the Mistwalker um, Dark Gift, and that would be really cool. Where maybe you wanted to travel the plains, maybe to rescue your old party, but you made a deal to try to rescue them and therefore go into the different planes. But because you made this deal, you are becoming one with the spirit world. So that's where you are now a phantom rogue. Is you made this deal and you were a rogue trying to going in and out and misty stepping, but the price that you're paying is you're communing with the spirits, the spirit world, and becoming more spirit than flesh. That would be a really cool backstory. Second skin, cast alter self once per long rest, which triggers another transformation at random. And also, by the way, sorry, Mistwalker to travel and then create an exhaustion inducing terrain. Wow, that is crazy. That is really powerful. Symbiotic being makes me think of Venom just for some reason. It's a second being, lives in your body, and you benefit from the languages it knows, the skills it's proficient in, and occasionally help protecting you and its own private. So again, Venom, right? Touch of Death, unarmed strikes that deal necrotic damage. So, like if you're a monk, you could do that. That'd be cool. And affect anyone involved in a grapple with you. Yeah, that's great. Watchers, advantage on investigation. So maybe you can have the investigator, the investigator background, but advantage on it, perception checks, and but disadvantage on deception performance. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Now we can deal with high level enemies though, because of course you're going to have some sort of, boss for the dark lords that we talk about, right? We talked about the 17 dark lords that essentially rule over those planes within the multiverse or the domains of dread. So if there's 16 domains of dread and 17 dark lords, the way I think about it is that there's going to be one for each domain and then a dark lord that rules all the domains. So it's like the big bad of these baddies. And baddies is a term that I'm borrowing from my kids. But anyway, high level enemies. These are the ones that we're probably going to have. Cthulhu is apparently now in D&D. So we'll have monsters that are pretty low, challenge rating, which these are going to be part of the denizens of mist, right? Each domain is going to have monsters unique to that domain that you as a dungeon master can implement. And then as like kind of like in a hierarchy, there's going to be those low level monsters, and then there's going to be, the mid tier, and then the boss of that domain. So we'll see that in 5.5, but we know that there is a stat block for Cthulhu. And Cthulhu has a armor class of 18, can fly, swim, and climb, has crazy HP. Really, so Cthulhu is going to be one of the Dark Lords. Strahd von Zarovich, which is the the head, so to speak, that the head honcho that lives in Ravenloft, in Barovia specifically. And Lord Soth, this is Lord Soth. Lord Soth is the Death Knight that we see, and folks in the comments will correct me, but if I'm not mistaken, it is going to be who we see in Dragonlance. But right now, those are the only confirmed. I bet you there's going to be more Vecna. I could see where Vecna is the 17th Dark Lord that rules over all the domains of dread. That's my speculation, but we'll see. In this, though, it says the author states that Wizards is promising that we're gonna explore all sorts of horror genres, from gothic to cosmic. So again, hence Cthulhu. And I am not necessarily cynical about it, unlike the author. I'm going to have a very low threshold and a very low sense of um I'm trying to remember the word right now, but I'm going to have a low standard. That would be the best way to say it because I want to be open to this. But then again, I'm not necessarily a fan of horror. That's just not my cup of tea, as they say. And they talk about the release schedule and some of the other aspects of it. But again, I don't necessarily care about that. So here are the pros and cons. If you enjoy horror, this might be up your alley. If you want to implement really cool horror esque or tragic backstories, classes, or even just, themes, this book might be for you. Me personally, I'm not a fan of horror. Some of the things that are involved, like the tarot cards and all that other stuff, I'm just not interested in, to be honest with you. I don't really care for it. But I would also encourage you to think about it because the book itself, from the website, when you click the pre-order, and if I were to click the pre-order now on D&D Beyond, it is quite a hefty price. Just the digital, well, right now, what we see here is the ultimate bundle for 150, where you can have the physical and the digital copy with all 16 domains dread, 17 dark lords, basically everything you would need, plus 28 digital quick play maps and 47 maps for VTT. Again, the physical Taroka deck, which is the tarot card like deck, the DM screen, the map pack for both physical and digital versions, and the pre order bonus, which is a digital dice set, a play along pack, and D&D encounters. So if I were to look at this and open that right there, so like all these encounters, the zombie clot, uh, all these other ones that we won't know about until later. Let me exit out of here. Here's the thing, and that's all well and good. Um, Again, that's pretty pricey for what you're gonna get. I like for me, I'll tell you right now, I'm not interested in a tarot card just for my personal my not only my personal faith, but just out of personal preference, I don't really care for any deck of sorts. It's just I can make my own type of like create my own twists just by writing it down. Not a big deal though. But for $150, like I can tell you, for me personally, I run mostly online games. Let's try to see if we can find. Now that's what the it looks like the whole package is going to be. But let's just see if there is a more. Okay, yeah, I think we found it right here. Okay, so this is the digital and the physical books, $75. That's actually not bad. I do have to say that's not bad because most physical books are about like it's 40 MSRP price is about 49.99 or 59.99 depending on what type of book. So physical, let's see, physicals again 59.99. So that's pretty standard. Digital is $40, which back in the day, it used to be like $30. So it's gone up by $10. So if you're going to purchase the book outright, it might be better for you to purchase the physical and the digital, right? For $75. That's not bad. So the two books alone mathematically are $75. And if you're going to get the kind of ultimate bundle, you're looking at another $75 for all the maps, all all the extras that come with it, right? Because again, in D&D Beyond, you can purchase the species backgrounds, you can sometimes purchase these individually, but not all the time. At least back in the day you were able to. And again, it's 5.5e, so it's going to be similar to 5e, but there's going to be some adjustments, right? You can have 47 what seems to be physical maps that include 28 digital maps. So I guess altogether 47 maps, excuse me, with 28 digital maps for a VTT. So we get one, two, three, we get four physical items, um, including the book, a digital version of the book, digital maps, and some pre-order bonuses with digital encounters and whatnot. So all that other stuff is $75. If I'll say it like this, in my opinion, if you are wanting to run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign within these horror settings, go for it. No one's really stopping you. But if you only think that you're going to use some of the feats, some of the classes, some of the monsters, and really not explore the worlds or the domains of Dread, you may just want to stick to the digital version. In my opinion, it's not really worth it to purchase the bundle or boat or even just the two physical digital combo package. You're better off just buying the digital version where you can kind of take what you want and then go from there. Yes, I like buying physical books. You've probably seen in previous videos and previous shorts and reels and all sorts of other short form content. I had stacks of books lined in my shelf. But the big thing about that, and again, you have to have space for it. It has to be practical for you. So if you are not going to spend an entire campaign in this world, just consider just getting the digital copy, excuse me. If you think you're going to spend a lot of time and revisit these planes or this environment or theme over and over, then get the physical and the digital. And you know what? If you're going to spend the money on both, that ultimate bundle's not bad, especially on the maps. The maps seem, I mean, honestly, maps are one thing that I always like to spend money on because an artist took the time to draw that map out. I was very lucky to have a friend make maps for me back in the day, and she was awesome at it. She was great. So take the time if you do like maps and you want to reuse maps, in perpetuity, that bundle might not be bad. Again, think of it the thesis to this for, using Ravenloft as an example is if you can utilize the maps, the classes, and all the other material in multiple campaigns, make the investment. If you only think that you will use these for, 5, 6, 7, or just like a finite number of games, sessions, or campaigns, whatever it might be sure to budget and go for the least expensive of the items. And again, I'm not associated with Wizard of the Coast at all. So I want to just give you my honest opinion about it, especially nowadays with things being a little bit pricier and just budgets that we need to really kind of emphasize in the hobby. Just consider that when you make this purchase, if you do. And again, for me, I'll be very honest, I'm not going to purchase this. It doesn't make sense for me to purchase the digital or the physical copies of the book unless something spurs or changes from the time of recording, and definitely not worth it for me to buy the ultimate bundle. It's probably just going to sit on my shelf, both physical or digital, and just kind of collect dust there. The only thing I would probably use is maybe the maps, But even then, for all my online games that I run, I use Tailspire. So I really don't need 2D maps for that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this helped you in making a decision of whether you want to purchase this or not. I know that it's longer than most of my other videos, but I'd rather spend 30-ish minutes of our time together talking about this book and whether it's a good purchase or not than you spending a lot of money and then regretting it at the end. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this, leave a comment down below if you're going to make that purchase or not, and what you're most excited about with this book. And subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to the channel for more D&D content. With that being said, I hope to see y'all later in the future. And as always, y'all, keep gaming.